Hello? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Claire.
And I'm Gab.
And I'm Lark. Rock University High School has been a part of CIF for about 13 years, so we are always trying to find new and engaging ways to introduce a youth audience to the idea of nuclear nonproliferation.
To do this, we made the choice to write a children's book intended for an audience of 5th to 7th grade. Our book is called Rising Whispers.
We wrote it for the purpose of encouraging those young people to engage with activism and be willing to speak up, even if they think their voice won't be heard. And with this year's theme being revitalizing nuclear disarmament and nonproliferation through cross-cultural youth engagement, we thought a children's book would be a fun and creative way to get that message across.
Rock University High School is a public charter school located on the Blackhawk Technical College Central Campus in Janesville, Wisconsin. We follow a middle college model where students can earn an associate's degree or credits toward a degree before their high school graduation. Our school has been a part of Critical Issues Forum for 13 years. CIF is a standalone class in our curriculum that is optional from 9th until 12th grade. CIF class meets twice a week for 75-minute periods.
During this presentation, we will talk about the process of creating our book. The first thing we will touch on is why we chose a book, then researching children's book, how we picked our story, dividing into teams, creating the characters and creating the settings, the writing process, the editing, the illustrating, the audio and the ebook, the marketing, our story and the theme, and finally our hopes and future for our book.
Starting with why we decided to create a children's book for our project. The first reason is that children's books are a very accessible medium. While they're usually intended for a narrow age demographic, in our case 10 to 12-year-olds, they can be understood and enjoyed by people older and in some cases younger than that. It's also much easier to engage someone in the topic of nonproliferation when you first present them with something they'd be interested in anyway, like the hook of a good fantasy story. Finally, there's a lot of precedent when it comes to distributing books. And at this point, it's not hard to publish them for free online as an ebook or an audiobook. This makes it easier to get our project out to as many people as possible.
To start our project, we had to research other books. Researching other books gave us an idea of the project we were getting into and what people have been doing in the medium for years. After reading many different stories, we got the idea that there's a lot of variety when it comes to children's books. They can include intricate world building, like the sci-fi middle grade book, The Last Swantista, by Donna Barbara Higuera, or they could be more low-stakes stories set in the real world, like Jerry Craft's New Kid. However, one thing we noticed was that all books had some applicable moral or lesson, and the clarity of that lesson was made depending on the book's age range.
Now on how we picked the story we ended up using for the final book. We started with a simple assignment for everyone in the class to write out a story of their own. Once they were all done, we spent an entire class period having story time where everyone read their stories aloud. Then it was up to all of us to vote on which one we wanted to get revised and become the final project. Some requirements we had for the final book was that it was engaging, age-appropriate, introduced the topic of nuclear nonproliferation without telling another person's or group's story.
With our story chosen, it was time to get to work dividing into teams. Now that we had our rough story figured out, we had to make sure that we were all on the same page about what kind of book it would become. We decided on a target age range of 10 to 12-year-olds, though with the hope that it could be enjoyed by other age groups as well. We also agreed that we were going to be formatting the story as a digital ebook with the option of an audiobook. With these details established, we divided into teams so that we could get to work. The authors were in charge of refining the story and writing out the final draft. The editors would go through each chapter to find mistakes and areas for improvement. The illustrator would draw out the illustrations. The marketing team would create materials to get the word out about the book. And that team eventually shifted to become the audiobook/ebook team, which was in charge of making the book into both of those formats. We tried to make sure everyone was part of the team that matched their skill sets and made sense. For example, Gab was made an author because it was her story that got voted to be the final. Communication was incredibly important throughout the entire process, as each team was working at the same time on different aspects of the book. The authors were the main people in communication with every other group, getting each person the materials they needed to do their tasks as they were being created.
With the group pre-work out of the way, we can now get into the details of what each group accomplished in their tasks, starting with the writing team and specifically character creation. With the character designs, a lot of thought went into them, where several nights where Claire and I worked on countless documents, piecing together different pictures from all over the internet, from flowers to jewelry to dresses. Settling on the final designs took a couple of weeks and a lot of communication with our illustrator, Lark. When picking the final design for our characters, we wanted them all to have a key visual for younger students to be able to identify each character with. Ranni's key visuals are vines and flower buds, Lil's are cold-toned flowers, and finally Trevor's, which is gold jewelry. As I said before, in this process, there was heavy communication between us, the authors, and Lark, our illustrator. During this time, we had to make sure that Lark could draw everything we were explaining and the image we were painting in our heads enough to be put on paper.
Now onto the settings, or the environments that our characters were going to be put in. With the characters fleshed out, we got to work on making each of the settings. We already had a basis for what the world would be like from Gab's first draft, but we needed to make sure every room and environment that a scene took place in had a clear image for Lark to work off of. We made sure to find reference pictures and give descriptions for each of them, all compiled in a Google Doc. This was kept in the shared Google Drive that every member of the class had access to, and we checked in with Lark most class periods to make sure they understood what they were meant to be drawing.
Now I will go over how we wrote our book. With the characters and settings figured out, we got to work creating a more detailed and thought-out outline for the story than what I had in my original first draft, which took quite some planning. Once we got the outline under control, me and Claire both wrote a chapter each week, totaling to 2 chapters a week until the book was finished.
Working with 2 authors had its ups and downs. We had to run any major details by each other so that we were both on the same page, and we noticed when we were writing that our word choices and how we wrote the characters' personalities had some inconsistencies that needed to be fixed. That said, we both only had to write about half the book, which made the whole process go a lot smoother once we got into the final draft writing.
Moving on to the editing process. We had 2 editors specifically assigned to catch flaws in our writing. To keep the book on pace, we would write a chapter and send it directly to our editors. With the team consisting of newer members, we acted as a slight support to them throughout the editing process. When the chapters were marked as complete, we went back and reviewed suggestions before continuing onward. It was important to us to have a running checklist of what needed to be done so we could remain on track and not forget anything.
Then came the illustration process. All illustrations started as text from the authors. The process of thinking up every scene took time with both the authors and me, the illustrator. Authors had put their visions into words and find references for various components, such as clothing and furniture. From there, it was up to me to visualize what the spreads should look like. I was given some creative freedom, but also had the framework to work off of. Creating spreads started as digital sketches, getting a rough idea of the layout, and getting that approved by the authors to proceed. Elements of art such as color, balance, and flow were carefully added to create a cohesive and intentional storyline. Collaboration with authors was key in ensuring my illustrations aligned with the theme and emotions we wanted our story to convey.
Now on to the creation of our audiobook and ebook. The audiobook was an additional project with the goal of making our book as accessible and enjoyable as possible. It would provide a more imaginative experience with different voices, painting a clearer story. In order to create the best base project, we initially had to push our focus to writing, illustrations, and basic marketing. So while the audiobook isn't quite completed, we have promising progress and will get it finished and published as soon as possible. The ebook is in a similar situation. However, the 2 formats will be publicly available very shortly after the conference.
Marketing was another important step to make sure we got our book out there. The marketing team worked from the very start on researching strategies that novels have used in the past to get the word out. With a foundational knowledge of what they would do, they created drafts of posters and social media posts that could be used to market the book before it was even completed. Once a couple of chapters were completed, they requested quotes from the book and illustrations for marketing materials. Illustrations also assisted them in giving an idea of the aesthetic of our book. Blurred stills of the characters on posters were used to create intrigue for our book, and final posters were put up around our school a couple weeks before the conference. Posts went out to the school's social media about the same time.
With our book finished and marketed, now we can talk about how it relates to the theme of revitalizing nuclear disarmament and nonproliferation through cross-cultural youth engagement. Rising Whispers is a story about a 12-year-old girl named Ranni. She is a satyr, a fantasy race of people with horns, living in the city of Golden Glade. Satyrs in this world have been historically oppressed by humans and elves, and Ranni's friend Trevor is the son of a human government official who plans to test a deadly new mushroom species in Whisperwind, a section of Golden Glade where most satyrs live, including Ranni. It's up to her and her friends, Trevor as well as Lilith the elf, to stop Trevor's dad from making Ranni's home into a testing ground.
Now you may be asking yourself, how does this children's book relate to our year's theme and nuclear nonproliferation as a whole? Well, Ranni in this story is meant to symbolize the community's harm due to nuclear weapons. This is seen in countless ways, such as her flower, which is the red oleander.
These flowers have come to represent nuclear peace and the need to never make the same mistake twice. For this reason, Ranni uses red oleanders to symbolize the spirit of a resilient activist. However, there are countless more symbolisms hidden within our pages that I invite you to please check out the book for yourself. For our younger audience that reads our story, we give an explanation of some of the major pieces of symbolism along with a very brief history lesson to hopefully encourage them to look more into the topic on their own.
Now, we will talk about the hopes and features for our book. And while we do that, please make sure to scan the QR code, which leads to a copy of our stories document. It will ask you to request permission to the document. Please do so and we can grant you access. Our idea from the start was to get our book out to the target audience, kids at the elementary level. Our hope is to bring the book to classes within the district and present it to them. We would read our story to them and follow some activities. One activity that we thought would be fun was creating coloring pages and coloring them with them. Another hope of ours is to get our book within school libraries within our district. Originally, we wanted to get physical copies in there, but we plan to start by getting them into the digital consortium. This would mean making the book accessible to everyone and publishing a QR code within the libraries. Students and staff could then scan the QR code and view the book digitally. This method also prevents them with easy access to the audiobook.
Our main goal with this project is to pull more young people into this topic by using creative outlets that shows the importance of nuclear nonproliferation, but in a less academical, technical way, causing it to be more easily understood for a wider audience. We believe by doing this, we give a chance for more people to feel welcomed and heard in important conversations like these.
Our last goal for the book is for it to become a source of education, specifically in areas that may not have ready access to it. Basically, we want to share it to countries and places that have issues with censorship of the topics referenced in the story's symbolism, such as Kazakhstan. With recent developments, even here in the United States has become a target for this, given that direct education about diversity, equity, and inclusion is currently at risk. We hope that our book, given that it is a fantasy and therefore interpretive, can get across these censors while still showing its message to those who need to hear it.
Thank you all so much for listening to how Rising Whispers was created. This project was a team effort, so a big appreciation goes out to our CIF team at home, Jackie, Autumn, Valkyrie, Izzy, Noah, Bill, and Nelson.
We'd also like to say a great thanks to our teacher, Erin Jensen, and our chaperone, Stephanie Virillo.
We are very fortunate to be able to participate in Critical Issues Forum. We're grateful to Director Masako Toki, the James Martin Center for Nuclear Nonproliferation, and the Middlebury Institute of International Studies.